And you are right. In AI now, I think of HR, I told you it's a pyramid, but when I think about the skills of HR and the offerings of HR to a company, it's a huge pie. And there's a sliver around talent development. There's a sliver around manager development. There's a sliver around executive development. There's the compensation. There's the benefits, the rewards. There's the training elements. There's the hiring. There's the job placement. There's the succession planning. There's mentoring. There's job rotations. There's all these things we can do. There's extended executive education programs. There's skill-based training, competency-based training. And AI now adds another element to the HR wheel, just like it's added to every function, marketing, IT, finances.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious, but are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
Scaling HR in private equity, from fractional CHRO to AI-powered people operations. Welcome to the Intelligence Forge, where we explore how business leaders are leveraging intelligence, both artificial and human, to build extraordinary companies. Today, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Thomas Lokar with us. Dr. Thomas has an incredible background working with companies like HP, Korn Ferry, and Time Warner, and now is helping private equity-backed companies scale through strategic HR leadership. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much. I'd like you to start by first introducing yourself to our audience. Tell us about your journey. How did you go from working at major corporations like HP and Time Warner to now serving as a fractional CHRO and advisory to multiple high-growing companies?
Sure. Well, I appreciate you pointing out in my title that I'm a doctor. Sometimes I forget. It's been so long ago that I got my PhD, but I did get my PhD back in the 90s from Kansas State University in industrial organizational psychology, which has become a field of psychology and business and human resources that's really been blowing up in terms of popularity. And a lot of my peers who went through their PhD in the 90s are chief talent officers, chief HR officers, entrepreneurs, business leaders. So it was a great choice then, and it's still a great choice today. I started in consulting, leadership development, management, interventions, org effectiveness, M&A work, both in pharma and retail and tech. And that led to moving from consulting to internal, where I started my first internal role with Bristol Myers Squibb, and then I moved to Time Warner and the AOL division from there. Spent a long time working my way up to chief learning officer, and eventually moved myself to the other side of the specialties in HR to a generalist and leading a large business unit for AOL. And then left there. HP recruited me into the government sector. That led to us moving to Texas 15 years ago. And here we are 15 years later, still in Texas. And really, HP was probably, starting with AOL, probably where I got my first international experience globally, working with a global company. I think at my biggest role there, I had something like 55,000 employees and $17 billion in revenue of responsibility. As just a single business partner, SVP within HP, there was probably 10 or 12 of us that had organizations that size. And had a very good run there. Really loved HP, loved the culture. It was going through a lot of change, a lot of CEO change during my 5 years there. And I got, I would say, antsy and interested in becoming a chief human resource officer. And That's when I had the opportunity to join Mitel to become their CHRO. Major transformation, tons of acquisitions. I took the company, and this is where I got my first PE experience, took the company from private to fully divested out of private equity into the public stock market, and then eventually went private again and left after a year after we went private again to go do some other things. And that's when I started doing consulting again and some of this interim kind of work. What I found was a lot of mid-sized to small PE-backed companies didn't have the HR leader. They had the CEO and the CFO. That's always PE's first priority. If they don't have a CEO and the CFO they want, they're going to go get them, or they're going to bring from the operating partners until they find the ones they want. And then CHRO and CIO and CMO come later. And I was just having a lot of success doing regular consulting, leadership consulting, a lot of HR strategy. And that led to an interim role with one of those PE-backed companies, Oceans Healthcare. And then that led, after that, went through a sponsorship change. I did a 2.5-year stint in the car wash industry on the manufacturing, supply, and service side with National Car Wash Solutions as their head of HR. That didn't go through a sponsorship change, and when it didn't go through as planned, I decided to step out of there. The growth trajectory wasn't where it was going to be for, I guess, my level of interest or the CEO's level of compensation tolerance. And so back into consulting, and this past year, that's where I've gotten thrust into doing more in PE-backed companies, still along the lines of some HR strategy, some leadership assessment, but more and more around how do we embed agentic AI into our HR processes. We have 10, 12 tools that they're all in the cloud. They're all SaaS-based, from your HCM all the way to your recruiting tool. And every one of those has an agent attached to it. And so there's just a lot of, I would say, interest, pressure, and a little bit of confusion about how do we knit it all together. And so I've been working, on my own with a couple of consulting partners who have other firms, and we've come together and started to just, crack the code on this very, very, very early on. But that's my story from beginning to end. Father of 5 grown kids, now a grandfather, multi-sport, competitive athlete over the last 30 years, traveled and raced around the world, as well as all the other things I do. So I keep myself healthy. I keep my mind moving and keep my life balanced.
Wow, thank you so much. That's really fascinating journey. Oh, incredible. Good. Let's move forward. Let's rewind a bit, probably to where you started from. When you started on coaching back in 2019 or thereabout, what was your initial vision at that time? Also, I always like our audience to know, because sometimes when you hear somebody's story, successful story, it's good to also know, or rather for them to know where you get started from. So how much funding or resources do you have available at the time when you started your journey? And what was the catalyst that made you say, yes, this is the time I need to build this? Then link us also to fast forward today, comparing to where you are today.
It's very relevant because I think about it a lot, and I've talked to other people, colleagues of mine who have now hung their own shingle, so they're a single shingle, or they joined a small firm, and they were wondering a little bit what that's going to be like. In 2019, I did have and I don't mind saying this, and your audience who's been in the C-suite will know this, I did have the luxury of a fairly healthy earn-out and severance package from Mitel. So, but I still had, 4 out of 5 kids to get through college, and a big mortgage here in Dallas, and all the cars, the phones, and trips that we wanted to take. So I still needed to keep the cash register ringing, the Treasury Department open for my wife and kids. But I had a little bit of flexibility where I could start to explore, doing some consulting work. And my original vision of On Coaching was back to what got me into IO psychology and HR in the first place, which is leadership development at every level, not just executive level, but all the way down. Now, what happened was, because I had this now, 20 plus year career as an HR leader, both on the center of expertise side, as they call it, the COE side, and the general HR leadership side and CHRO side. I had just a number of colleagues from HP, from Mitel. I had neighbors who are successful business people saying, "Oh, you're doing consulting work. I've got an HR problem, or we've got some employee issues, or we cannot keep, nurses on the hospital floor," which was one of the prevailing issues with those.
Yeah.
Exec comp, regular comp, sales comp, all sorts of things in the comp area that I've become expert at, that I helped out. So I ended up just really generalizing. And once again, I probably didn't do as much leadership development. I did do a fair amount. I didn't mention this previously, but I'm pretty well grounded in executive assessment, psychological, psychometric measurements and assessments, and development planning and coaching of people off of that, both from a career transition or a succession planning potential standpoint. But at the time, I really thought I'd be doing more of that. And what ended up happening was, this is my view, and a lot of HR leaders got promoted early in 2020, and they might not have been ready, and their executives around them were like, uh-oh. And instead of wanting to throw the baby out of the bathwater, I would come in and almost, and this is what a lot of fractionals are doing today, and a little bit of what I'm doing today is walk side by side with the full-time person. I spent a few hours a week working with them, the leadership team, and maybe picking up some of the work that they just haven't been able to get to because the pace of the business, especially private equity, is moving so fast. So that's where it started. And I will say this is relevant to today too. I had another friend from HP. He wrote a book with a friend, the Talent War. They formed a consulting firm, and most of their consulting was in recruiting. So really wasn't consulting, but they had this intake of, and a website, and they had a marketing person. They had all these opportunities coming in, and a lot of them were around executive assessment, top team building, org change, org communication, all things that I had expertise in. And so on coaching and Talent War Group kind of merged together there for about a year. And we, I 1099'd in, and I did a ton of work through them. Okay. And that's really what happened again when I left NCS end of last year, and I rehung my shingle under on coaching, Emmanuel, this is for your audience so that they don't sit there and think their network is terrible. I'm shocked at how little my network will really help me out. And a bunch of my colleagues who are single shingle, we have this conversation all together at the same time. Cannot believe how many of our colleagues who are still in economic buying positions won't throw us a bone, won't throw us any work. And so what we ended up doing is you start finding these little coalitions, and you find ways where you can tag along, or they can tag along, or together you provide a solution to a client that you didn't have. And so that's really what happened again. And that's what I've been doing now. And any of the Agentic AI work I've done is not what I've drummed up. It's really through this coalition of other consultants, HR professionals, 1099 cobbled together and doing the work, and doing good work and meaningful work, especially at your mid-market PE-backed company. I'm talking 2,000 to 1,000 employees, 300 to 700 million in revenue. That is really an underserved market. It's the underserved middle. It's like almost mirrors America in a way, but it's the underserved middle in terms of OD, HR, process, org transformation, even M&A support. Lots of opportunity there. And so that's what I'm doing today. And in that, a couple of fractional opportunities that have come my way. And so I have 2 regular fractional opportunities I do a couple hours a week. They're year-long contracts. And then I'll get pulled in. I'll finish here, Emmanuel. I have another consulting firm that I worked with at NCS that reached out to me when they saw I was freelancing. And so I'm doing some work. They're a much larger firm than most of the others I work with. They're bringing me in because they don't have a resident CHRO, and they've got a couple of projects that my expertise seems valuable. I know industries that they're working in with these 2 clients. And so that's also been, serendipitous. Again, it's sometimes the people in your network, or more often it's someone one level removed from your network that ends up providing you work. The people you think are going to, they never do. And I say you can't be frustrated with that. It's just timing. It's economics of the situation. It's nothing personal. Just move on and look for other opportunities, because eventually, if you've laid the groundwork with those people, they'll come around and they'll find you, and they did for me previously.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Here is the magic one question. If you have a magic wand and you could instantly improve one thing about your own company's operation or maybe one of the companies you're working with, what will it be and why?
I'm experiencing this as a consultant, and so is my network, is it's taking really long to make a decision to move. Problems don't get better by observing them.
Sure.
And so if we can work out the finances and you had the funding approved beforehand, or we need to adjust it and phase it out differently, let's go. Especially the PE-backed companies, you've got to move quicker because value creation has a time horizon within private equity. But I've got a mentor, CEO friend of mine, who used to always say, early money is good money. And so the quicker we can move and create value, like in the HR stack, which is sometimes a little harder to show unless it's in retention or staffing pace, or you change the comp model and it ends up producing sales results that you hadn't anticipated. But some of the things we do in terms of workforce planning and leadership and people development and training take a little longer to show their investment results, their return.
Yeah.
And so the longer you wait on these kinds of things, you could be affecting the multiple of your company. And so to me, I get impatient and I have to be patient with clients because that's the best way to lose a client. But also we do need to move. Even if we did incremental things, let's just start going faster because the problem isn't going to go away. It's not going to get any better, and likely it'll get worse. If you knew it as a problem before, it'll likely get worse. It's like I've got this splinter in my hand that I've been waiting for it to come out and so that I could grab it. And now it's probably infected. So I'm probably going to have to dig it out because I've been just ignoring it.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, let's dive into the main topic of today, scaling HR in private equity environment. You've written about how most companies don't truly get engagement beyond the smiley face and high fives, From your experience working with some of these PE-backed companies, what does real HR transformation looks like, and why do so many organizations struggle to move beyond the surface level initiatives?
Whoa, that's a big question. Okay. I think I know, unfortunately, the HR budgets that are set in PE really aren't commensurate with the goal and objectives that the PE firm or the CEO of the portco have for the company. They're never as much as that head of HR would like. They've never been as much as I'd like. When you think about Fortune 1000, Russell 2000, Fortune 100 companies, it's not that they get to spend money, indiscriminately without a budget, without justification, but there is an expectation of budget in relation to revenue, usually a half a point to a point, and not including healthcare benefits, but just regular HR stuff like training, like leadership development, like staffing, like engagement. And I think it forces then HR people within private equity to maybe not hire. This is my experience coming into a couple of private equity firms like Mitel, like Oceans, like NCS, not hire the quality HR person, not put in the quality HR tools to empower the quality HR people to do the work with managers and employees. At the end of the day, HR function will never be enough to touch 100% of the employees. Your middle managers touch 100%, 99% of the employees 100% of the time every day. And so, I think the missing formula for most PE-backed HR functions is they don't have the budget discussion around, well, what are we doing for middle managers? What are we doing for first-line supervisors? The culture is seen through their eyes to the employees and looking up to those managers. So if we want to make a change, we want to drive performance, we want to drive goal setting, we want to drive accountability, we want people on fire with their faith when they come to work, no matter whether it's oil and gas or pharmaceuticals or computer programming or cleaning hotels and commercial buildings. You want people engaged and you need managers who know what to do and how to do that. I find that there's a lot of talk toward doing that, but the financial resources and the people resources to do that well within a PE-backed company, especially these middle to smaller ones, is not usually there. There's a host of reasons, Emmanuel. There's usually, if you think about how private equity uses leverage to bring one entity together with 100 other entities, whether it's veterinarians or car washes or fast casual restaurants. They're using that leverage to bring them together, and those acquisitions end up having a lot more hair on them in terms of integration, but they've bolted the EBITDA together, and they've got a nice story to tell around the multiple. But behind the scenes is a lot of infrastructure that's usually missing that has to get done. And so, the CEO and the CFO have to make budget decisions around that. And the CHRO is usually third on that list, if not fourth, when it comes to like IT infrastructure and things you need to do around that area. Does that answer what you were getting?
Interesting. Yeah, it's just to know what is going on out there and why your skill will be valuable to any organization. Otherwise, if they continue the way they're doing things, definitely they won't get any good result. And I think you explain it very well, but thank you so much for that. I see you mentioned also something powerful in one of your posts, that stop thinking like a cost center, start thinking like a value creator. That's a mindset shift, definitely, and it's easier said than done. You know what I'm talking about. But can you, share a specific example from your experience where you have helped transform an HR function from being seen as overhead to become a strategic driver of business value?
Yeah, I think, the longest story and the most robust story I have is at Mitel. When I got there, it was just a very small HR department, literally behind a glass office in Quebec or Ontario, Canada, with the word personnel stenciled on the glass. And the folks, were barely known by the employee population, leaders or managers, and they sat behind the glass and they transacted AR. And we were about to double in size, not only from a revenue and people standpoint, but we were going to go from North America to global, Asia and Europe through this acquisition. And so it was a multi-stage process of putting in technology, changing out the people, and finding people who have done great total reward exec comp work, sales comp work, great HR generalists and field HR who have set up HR operations that can scale and meet the needs of employees and managers, putting in technology so it didn't all fall on HR and we could leverage the technology like a Workday, like our LMS, like LinkedIn Learning at the time, which was Linda, I believe, putting those technologies in the hands of managers and employees so that HR didn't have to do everything. Super helpful. First and foremost, though, I built a great leadership team at Mitel. That was the first thing. And in that, every time I added new people, we got new and different work done in terms of higher order things. I should say this, Emmanuel, because it's relevant to your previous question and this question. I very much look at HR as a lot like Maslow's hierarchy. At the lower end of HR is your basic needs like payroll, like benefit. Yeah. I learned very quickly in my first CHRO job with our payroll system in Europe. If you miss a payroll, nothing else matters in your HR model or what you're doing up Maslow's hierarchy strategically. Succession planning, top team building. We were doing process improvement and training everyone to be Kaizen, blue belts. No one cared about that in Switzerland because the team there missed the payroll by 3 hours, and people's mortgages and their car payments and all sorts of things were at risk. So part of the transformation at Mitel was not only getting in people that could do the higher order things, but that people that also cared about fixing the blocking and tackling at the base level, the employee relations level, the manager hand-to-hand contact between manager and employee at times. And then with that, we were able to do some massive transformation. It wasn't what I would say always fun. We changed the culture and the engagement scores and every evidence of culture from a poor culture to a high-performing culture over that 6-year period. We got good marks, but we had to do massive layoffs throughout our organization. Our workforce planning model that we devised looked off to me when I first got it, and one good solid picture in Workday was like a fat diamond instead of a pyramid. We had tons of middle managers that had been there 30, 40 years. They weren't going anywhere. And so I was looking at our turnover data and our engagement data, and our lowest level in engagement or satisfaction in the job was 3 to 5 years on the job, and our highest turnover was there. And you said, well, yeah, because they're not happy. But the link to the workforce plan was they didn't see anywhere they could go, and they were taking direction from people who didn't want to see the world any differently. And we were moving from an on-premise PBX company to a cloud communications company, and we needed software engineers. We needed software development. We needed to get away from old development models and get to new models. And so that HR transformation, bringing a team together that had the bandwidth to deal with the blocking and tackling, start putting in programs that developed leaders, managers, employees, gave them chances to grow, put in compensation systems and goal setting systems that aligned with that. We were then able to do a transformation of the workforce, the heavy lifting of doing these layoffs in Europe, in Canada, in the US, and creating bandwidth, financial bandwidth to be able to hire in India, to build a development center in India, to build development centers in Eastern Europe, to be able to buy a company in California and keep those employees because they were really smart cloud-based employees. So we didn't have to lay any of them off because we had created this workforce plan, which allowed us to afford that. All of that was because I built a great HR team and I had the right quality people and we had the right strategy in terms of that HR pyramid. We got the blocking and tackling. I'm talking all the way down to like compliance and how we operated in each country, all had to be rewritten. Because everything that we left unwritten or redone, if we didn't redo it, the old system found its way back in. And you were then, stitching the same wound within a country, and it just became painful. We set a team aside just to go country to policy, handbooks, processes, how were they using Workday, what were they not using in it, one country by country, making sure we got there. Now, again, looking back on it, I should have done it faster and I should have probably paused some other things and put a bigger team on that because it took too long in my mind and it didn't affect our multiple. It didn't affect us getting transacted, but it just, I'm competitive and it wasn't perfect. And we could have been more perfect in that sense.
All right. Thank you so much. I think it looks like, the world of HR, it's really huge than what a lot of people think it is. I mean, people think, well, HR is just all about hiring people and paying people. I mean, that's the key thing, but it's really big than that with all that you have explained so far. But thank you so much for sharing that. I know you mentioned using AI at the beginning when we were talking. I just want to find out, is there a specific tool apart from your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Gemini, your Krog, that you are actually using, to leverage and to stay on top, either for your own company or for the companies that you work for? I'm interested in how you're actually using HR specifically. Maybe you can give us a few examples, how you're actually leveraging AI or some kind of technology to actually do the work you're doing that has actually, benefited yourself, your company, or the company that you've worked for.
Sure. That's another big one because I can go in 8,000 directions. And you are right. In AI now, I think of HR, I told you is the pyramid, but when I think about the skills of HR and the offerings of HR to a company, it's a huge pie. And there's a sliver around talent development. There's a sliver around manager development. There's a sliver around executive development. There's the compensation. There's the benefits, the rewards. There's the training elements. There's the hiring. There's the job placement. There's the succession planning. There's mentoring. There's job rotations. There's all these things we can do. There's extended executive education programs. There's skill-based training, competency-based training. And AI now adds another element to the HR wheel, just like it's added to every function, marketing, IT, finances. And the way I've been, using it for myself is the same ways you probably described. I think the interesting or unique thing that I've gotten to do recently with AI is move away from just the LLM model that spits out information better than a Google search and move more towards this agentic AI and work with companies on orchestration platforms. And I think this is the classic example of OD meets technology. So AI is the technology, agentic AI is the technology. But if you were to just, and I sat in a 2-day conference of leading HR people talking about how they were using AI at ServiceNow and HP and all these big famous companies, Walmart. And one of the things that kept coming across, there were a bunch of things, but one of them that kept coming across is if you think of AI as just a technology you deploy and things get better, it's going to fail. Like any good technology, your processes have to be buttoned up before you release it to agentic AI. And so a colleague of mine and I at FutureSolve, another consulting firm that I work with, a gentleman by the name of Andy Nahar, he started working with OneReach, an orchestration platform, an agentic AI platform. And what we found with the first client we deployed with, and I think now I want to turn this into a regular offering, is you've got to do the process analysis. And they wanted us to look at 3 or 5 very sticky, high touch, high transactional, mistake prone processes, not just HR mistakes, but often the managers, the employees within onboarding, within drug testing, within background checks, I-9 verifications, you name it. A lot of these transactional things at that lower level end up becoming difficult to track at times and difficult to repeat over and over again perfectly. But Agentic AI can do it. But be sure you can release that to Agentic AI. You're smart to go in and do process work. And so I brought in another colleague and said to her, because she started her firm, she's an expert in process improvement and Kaizen. I said, let's merge your Kaizen process, deep dive skills in looking at a whole roadmap of a process, figure out what part of it is error, what part of it doesn't need to continue. Look at that as setting aside AI, look at that as a solution to a client.
Okay.
Now where do you deploy Agentic AI into that solution to make it even better? What could we hand over to Agentic AI? The thing I like about this, like a OneReach and these orchestration platforms is the coding doesn't require knowledge of Python and a black screen. It's literally writing a Word document like a script or a character in a play, telling them where to be, when to be, and then when to call human in the loop, which is the other, thing we have to be observant in is someone should be monitoring how Agentic AI is answering questions, putting information into your HCM, pulling information out of your HCM, and ensuring that the outcomes we wanted through this new process we've designed are happening. And I think that to me is going to be the differentiator between companies that do and deploy Agentic AI well and those that will fail at it is, did you look at all of your processes? And this goes back to HR software solutions, when PeopleSoft first and then Workday and SuccessFactors, garbage in, garbage out. It's the same thing with AI. And I think that's going to be, to me, something I'm excited about this next year, deploying more is doing these deep dive process improvement, process analyses, as is maps to 2B maps, and then deploying Agentic AI into that, whether it's staffing, whether it's onboarding, whether it's interviewing, you name it.
All right. Thank you so much. I think you really broke it down, and I think our audience will definitely love your explanation. I want to find out from you, I don't know if this is relevant to you, but I'm just going to ask anyway. Where do you see your company in the next 12 months? I don't know if you are looking for more clients, you want to grow your revenue, but where do you see your company? And I'm not talking about the company you work with, but your own personal company.
Yeah.
Where do you see it in the next 12 months?
I think it's going to go very much like it did in 2019, that I'm going to be doing more and more work with FutureSolve and this other consulting firm, as well as my fractional work. And to be totally transparent, one of these fractional jobs by the end of 2026 could end up becoming a full-time gig. One, because I really like the company, I like the leadership team, and it's in an area of commercial and residential real estate development that's very unique, and it's a technology-backed company. So it's not building buildings or managing spaces like a CBRE. It's actually a developer. I could see myself finishing out my career with them. But in terms of consulting, over the next year, I see doing still this HR transformation M&A work with partner consultants. And then I see us with probably 3 to 5 very large, I'm talking multi-million-dollar Agentic AI process improvement engagements over the next 12 months. There are a lot of planes circling up in the air. We just need to bring them down on the runway, and interest rate drops, getting used to tariffs. I think there's going to be I think 2026 should present itself with a faster buying cycle. I hear this in all from exec recruiting all the way down to buying pencils. It's just very hard to get commitments right now. And I think 2026 is going to open up. I have a feeling I'm going to be busier than I want to be.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. So everyone, solve one problem or the other for some people or the other. And people see you as changing things for people, helping them to solve one problem or the other. But let's look at you yourself. Let's look at your own company. Are there anything that keeps you awake at night that you think, this one challenge with my own company, with my own consulting firm, if I could be able to solve it today, I think it will make a whole life easy. Is there anything like that that you want to share with us, with our audience?
Well, one of them is selfish, which is I grew up for the last 30 years in business with an executive assistant. I don't have an executive assistant. My wife is busy with our grandson and her own thing. So I am my executive assistant. So just not having someone to rely on to check my work and to check my schedule would be great. But I think a lot of us who are single shingled, when we first start out wondering, how am I going to get any work? And I think that's just part of the life. You're never going to be fully content with the sales funnel. And none of us like doing cold calling, or none of us want to sign up with one of these LinkedIn people that are telling us they're going to generate 1,000 leads in 2 weeks, because none of them work out. Don't do it. If you're thinking of doing it, don't do it. Unless you can talk to someone who's used them and you can verify with 2 or 3 references. But I think just the consistency in the sales funnel keeps you up at night. And also that, I may get some stuff started in the consulting world and I may go back to being a full-time CHRO again, which, I've got to keep in mind as I'm fostering relationships with colleagues in consulting or with clients. And I'd work my way through that. I did that back in 2021 when I joined Oceans full time. But that's, I think I'm still probably 1 foot into the consulting world and 1 foot, I'd love another shot at CHRO.
Yeah, but I think I like your transparency, because again, if the offer comes in and you are able to be there permanently, I think what you're saying is you rather prefer to just stay there because you love the company, you love what they do, you love the culture. And that definitely may be the end of the consulting firm, or maybe you just keep it somewhere and then you later come back to it, Yeah, but again, I tell people, as long as you are happy, whatever you're doing, the most important thing is that you wake up in the morning and you are excited that, yes, I'm going to do this. Again and again, you keep doing it. I think that is what counts. It doesn't matter how much you're making. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It's not going to really give you joy. It's not going to give you fulfillment. But even if you're not making a lot of money, but you love it, when you wake up in your sleep, in your dream, you dream about it, I think that is what even elongates our lives, because we are always joyful. We are always happy. We are fulfilled. We have peace. It doesn't matter what is going on around us. We can always count on the fact that what we are doing is giving us that great joy. And I think for me, that's what counts. Right.
Well, Emmanuel, I like at 59 when I don't wake up and I'm not thinking about it, then I'm joyful. When I can just sleep through the night and then start the day, I think 30 years working in business, your head is just constantly grinding on emails and tasks to do and things to do. And I love the work. I love the challenge of, going into an office every day and seeing what's new. But the nice thing about this freelancing is I don't wake up very often obsessed with something unless it's an idea that I want to try out or a different solution for the client. Then I will go and write something down and then go back to bed. I'm not waking up with worry. I think that's the most important part of this job is don't do it to worry at night, because you can do other things.
Sure, for sure. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. If you're sitting in front of another fractional expert, what piece of advice will you be giving them today?
Well, you're worth way more than you think you are. So whatever they tell you is the hourly price, double it and see what happens. My own individual consulting, I charge a premium, but in the fractional world, you'd end up probably discounting it a little bit because it's a longer term kind of contract usually. And so you're willing to do that for the hours per week, but don't discount yourself too much on a weekly basis. If you're a former C-suite executive, that is all caveated by the size of the company, right? If it's a 5-person company, don't expect to get $500 an hour. But, I've had large companies, Fortune 100 companies, come to me on a fractional opportunity and they wanted to pay me $200 an hour. And you think, well, God, that sounds great. Well, in the world of consulting, that's not great. The world of consulting I operate in, $500 to $1,000 an hour sounds great. $200 an hour from a Fortune 100 company sounds like they're going to get more than I'm going to get. And so there's no equity. You don't get benefits. You still got to cover your own benefits. There's no bonus program. And you got to put that in your calculus as a fractional, because you are doing work as a C-suite executive. It may not be full time, but it's worth something to them, or they would have not come to you. So you got to make sure you calculate that and get a fair weekly or hourly or monthly wage.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, probably they love your coaching style, or they want to just ask you some few questions, or maybe they even have something they want to offer you, how can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Thomas Lokar, PhD. There's another Thomas Lokar who's not related to me in Slovenia who trains fighting German Shepherds. He's an interesting guy, and I'm sure there might be a use for him, but I'm Thomas Lokar with a PhD. And then I have two emails. You can get me at thomas@execoncoaching, one word, execoncoaching.com, or at tlokar1@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much. I think your insight on transforming HR from a cost center to a value creator is really practicable. I think the way you explain it, even for me, I think I understood what it takes and some of the things you're doing, the value you are adding. And I think our audience definitely, we appreciate that. HR is a career that is very unique. And except you have interest in it, especially that you have interest in people, but to get started with, I don't think anyone will want to do it, because I mean, these days there are technology that you're using, but before then you have to have interest in people, because the people is actually what drive whatever happens. I mean, you spoke about the training, other area whereby HR fills into. If those people are not happy based on all those things, then the company is not going anywhere. And you know what I'm talking about. So I think anyone out there listening and watching the podcast interested in knowing more about HCM or HR to say, I think they will be able to get in touch with you. Thank you so much for coming through, and we really do appreciate it. Any last word from you?
No, Emmanuel, this has been fun. Thank you for having me on. I wasn't quite sure what we're going to do, but I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed your questions and your style, and look forward to seeing the episode if it makes it off the cutting room floor.
All right, it will, definitely. It will, because what you are sharing, it's not what I know. I know a little bit of HR, but it's not as deep as the knowledge that you're sharing, especially the kind of role and what you've done, with all these big companies. It's very, very valuable. And I think this can also put you into some spotlights. So people are looking for work to do, and they could be able to get in touch with you. But thank you so much. We really do appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.